probably the best way to get the truth would be to put the president under oath, because as he's made plain in the past, he feels it's perfectly fine to lie to the public. After all, he has said, it's not like I'm talking before a magistrate. Well, maybe he should talk before a magistrate.
Okay, as the Mueller probe appears to enter its final stages, House Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff this morning stressed the importance of having Donald Trump, the man at the center of it all, testify before a grand jury. Joining me now, political consultant Jimmy Williams, Tiffany Cross of the Beat DC, Jason Johnson of The Root. Let me go to you first, Jimmy. You have some good experience working in the Congress. Should Donald Trump have to testify before Congress, let alone a grand jury? And do you think that's even plausible?
Should he? Probably. Is it plausible? Let me be emphatic. Hell no, he will not do this. Bill Clinton didn't even do this. He testified before a grand jury, and that's when he got caught for saying he didn't have sex with that, whatever, blah. But the bottom line is that a president of the United States, a sitting president of the United States, coming to testify before the Congress on either side of the Capitol Dome, I just don't know of any precedent for that. And I think it would be highly unusual, not to mention he would use exactly what I've just said as a basis for not testifying. But at some point, that bus has to hit either a parking spot or a wall, because he's going to have to be compelled to be under oath and testify somehow, some way, as to what his actions were or his associates' actions were and whether or not he knew anything about that.
Yep.
That's going to happen at some point. The question is where, when, and how. So I don't know.
Nerd trivia time. Not only did Bill Clinton testify before the grand jury in the Monica Lewinsky affair, Ulysses S. Grant testified before a grand jury in the whiskey ring scandal and then fired the special prosecutor, and they hired another one, but he still testified in a grand jury case. More than 200 people indicted, more than 100 people convicted. That's some history for you nerds out there. Let's go to Tiffany Cross. Adam Schiff, let me play one more piece of him, and he's talking about what a lot of people think is the crux of, maybe the crux of the Russiagate scandal, which is Donald Trump wanted to make some cash.
The reason why this whole Moscow Trump Tower issue is so central to our investigation is that it explains, or potentially explains, the president's bizarre affinity for Vladimir Putin, and that is that he stood to make more money from this transaction than any deal in his life. He may believe that when he leaves office, that he still wants to build this tower, and while that may not be criminal, it is nonetheless corrupt.
The last part of that, Tiffany, I think is key, because if what Donald Trump did was all about trying to corruptly earn money, either during his presidency or after, and it's not criminal, I wonder what the political fallout would be if the Mueller probe winds up finding that. Corruption, not criminality.
Yeah, I think his base is with him regardless. But this is what I found interesting, Joy, during the Michael Cohen testimony, and you had all the Republicans accusing Michael Cohen of lying. Well, the thing they were accusing him of lying about was this Trump Tower Moscow deal. And so it does make sense that, just like Congressman Schiff said, this is why he was lauding all this praise on Vladimir Putin, because he had a multi-million-dollar reason to. And so the fact that Republicans were saying to Michael Cohen, like, yeah, well, you already lied about the Trump Tower Moscow. It's like, guys, you're kind of calling your own guiltiness out here. So I feel like it won't have a huge impact on his base. It won't even have a huge impact on Republicans. You saw how Republicans on the right side of the Oversight Committee used their time during that hearing. But I think it will put some fire and enthusiasm on the left side of politics, the left side politically and the right side morally.
Yeah, and well, they didn't spend a lot of time looking at that check. The checks that Michael Cohen brought as corroboration.
He brought the receipts.
He brought receipts, and they were like, what receipts? We don't see any receipts.
Right, exactly.
Let me go to you, Jason Johnson, to play one more piece of Adam Schiff on our own Meet the Press earlier today. And this is about something a lot of people are also have in mind, which is whether or not the Mueller probe is going to come to an end because of pressure for it to end.
I also think that the special counsel feels some time pressure to conclude his work, and knowing that the White House would drag out a fight over the subpoena, that may be an issue as well.
Especially, Jason, in a lot of people's view, if it looked like the Mueller probe, the Eye of Sauron, was turning to the Trump children.
Look, Joy, I don't think that Robert Mueller cares anything about our timeline, right? I mean, like, politically speaking, everyone wants to predict, oh, yeah, he's gonna finish it right before the midterms. He's going to do it before spring. He's going to do it on Valentine's Day and ruin everything. No, like, I don't think Robert Mueller cares. I think his primary concern is I'm going to continue this investigation until I am done, and I'm going to give so many different state prosecutors so much evidence to continue their own cases that this administration is going to be wrapped up in lawsuits until 2021.
Yeah, and coming down there from red state America in South Carolina, Jimmy Williams, will Donald Trump's base even care if Mueller's probe produces a raft of indictments and jail terms?
No. Yeah, listen, we know who's defending who here, 35 to 40% of the country, and I think it's actually less than that at this point, especially here in South Carolina, the number's higher. They're going to defend Donald Trump no matter what he does. He could go on Fifth Avenue and shoot someone point blank in the head, and they'd be like, yeah, but they deserved it. I mean, come on. So it doesn't matter what Donald Trump does. It doesn't matter whether the sun rises. It doesn't matter if the cost of milk goes up or down. Donald Trump is a god to these people. I understand it. That's perfectly fine. I just don't agree with them.
Yeah.
So, in the end, the rule of law, which is the basis of our Constitution, the basis of our country since 1789, will prevail. It always has. It always will. America is always bigger than any one bigot. She always has been.
Well, let's make what we call in TV a hard turn. All right, let's talk about Julian Castro. And Julian Castro is running a very interesting presidential campaign because he seems to have staked his claim on this issue of reparations for slavery and trying to sort of establish some uniqueness for his campaign based on that. Let's play a little bit of him earlier on CNN defending that stance and contrasting it with one Bernie Sanders and his stance on things like Medicare for all. Let's take a listen.
It's interesting to me that when it comes to Medicare for all, health care, you know, the response there has been, we need to write a big check. That when it comes to tuition-free or debt-free college, the answer has been, we need to write a big check. And so if the issue is compensating the descendants of slaves, I don't think that the argument about writing a big check ought to be the argument that you make if you're making an argument that a big check needs to be written for a whole bunch of other stuff.
Let me actually, I'm going to come to Jason first and then Tiffany. Is that kind of an argument resonating when you're talking with voters?
Well, it does. It's funny. Castro's sort of explanations, I showed some of those to my students when he talks about reparations. And, you know, to the degree that my Morgan State students are kind of a small focus group, they've been impressed. But I think what it also speaks to is this. The greatest weakness in Bernie Sanders' campaign is his inability to connect with many African-American voters. Now, I know people are going to scream and they're going to be mad, but look at it. A lot of his black staff from 2016 aren't back. He still doesn't poll well with African-American voters in South Carolina. So if reparations is a particular wedge issue that you can use to knock out one of the pillars of Bernie Sanders' sort of current front-runner status, that's what you're supposed to use. And I'll also say this. There are tons of people out there that have studied reparations. The idea that Bernie keeps saying, I'm a revolutionary, but at the same time can't figure out how to do reparations, that didn't impress me either, and I don't expect to get a check anytime soon.
Rest in peace to your mentions, Jason. Your mentions, God bless them. Pour a little bit out for them.
I'm ready.
They have been ethered. I wouldn't go on Twitter if I were you for about like 4 days. Let me go back to Tiffany Cross now.
I'm used to it.
I'm just saying. You know, the biography
Jason, that was really dumb, Jason.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't like Twitter. You just don't want to be on Twitter. You just get off Twitter now.
If it's not that, it's Tiffany. So I'm pretty much...
Either way, Game of Thrones is coming back and you don't know anything about it. So you got a lot of problems.
Right.
Let me go to Tiffany Cross. Is there any, I mean, the fight for the African-American vote is real. I mean, you have Elizabeth Warren making a lot of case for it. You have Beto coming in, who ran pretty strongly among African-Americans in Texas. You have Bernie Sanders trying to re-up his biography. Of course, doing it in Brooklyn is probably complicated because of all that happened, like Howard Beach and that era of the civil rights movement where he was not a part of it. Does anyone have kind of an inside track right now? Because you have Kamala Harris and Cory Booker in the race and Julian Castro now going for it.
Well, I think the question that black voters are asking is not how black are you, but how black are your policies? And the fact that people do have some questions about, you know, everybody from Cory Booker and Senator Kamala Harris, I mean, it shows that black people are not a homogenous group. And if you've been under the impression that, oh, well, black voters will just follow the black candidate, that's proven to be not the case this time around. So I think it's great that people have to work to get black voters and people have to, you know, we're separated geographically, education, you know, by our education, our socioeconomic status, et cetera. So our interests are different. And I think Julian Castro does not get enough attention. He's done a great job of making his case to minorities, including Black and Hispanic folks. And I wish that he would get more attention across all the networks.
All right. Jimmy and Tiffany will be back. Jason Johnson is going to be creating a brand new Twitter profile so that none of y'all that are angry at him can find him. And up next, it's time for Who Won the Week.